Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at some small, seriously flawed but absolutely fun prime lenses. If you are shooting full frame, if you're shooting a DSLR, well, this video may not be for you. However, if you are shooting micro four thirds or one of Nikon's obsolete 1 series cameras, then this video may be for you. Especially those Nikon 1 shooters. Let's face it, the lenses that came with these cameras are pretty much of the chocolate teapot variety. Most of them no longer work. In fact, if you find a functioning lens on the likes of eBay, they go for a premium price. Bodies though are still fairly affordable, so that's another option for us. Micro four thirds shooters have much more in the way of options. However, I do think that these prime C-mount lenses are of such a bargain that they are still worth your consideration. So what are we covering in this video? Well, we're going to be looking at a trio of affordable C-mount lenses I think you should perhaps consider, and I'm going to be sharing with you some of the images I managed to capture on a nice summer's day about a month ago. During this time I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of each lens. I'm also going to introduce you to a lens to avoid. So these C-mount lenses are often referred to as CCTV lenses because for the majority of them that was their original purpose. However, with the advent of the mirrorless camera, and particularly these micro mirrorless systems, it gave these lenses a new lease of life. So all of these lenses are Chinese made and they're sold under brands like Fujian, Sodial, Respray. Some of them are even sold without any brand names whatsoever. One thing they do share in common is they are all super affordable. The cheapest I've paid for one of these lenses was £11 and the most expensive was £24. This certainly won't break the bank. In addition, you're going to have to buy an adapter. Now that will mount the C-mount lens to your chosen camera system. On average, these lens adapters cost around about £10, so it's still super affordable. So what are these lenses like? These lenses vary in construction. Some may have stepless apertures, whilst others have the focus ring where you'd normally expect to find the aperture ring, and little quirks altogether like that. Optically, they are certainly going to be inferior to many modern lenses by big manufacturers. Nobody's going to be expecting Leica quality out of something you've paid about £20 for. Instead, you're going to find that these lenses have optimal sharpness right in the centre of the lens itself, and the outside may have some kind of swirling bokeh, which is really desirable and gives the images a nice dreamy feel. Now this swirling bokeh is much more noticeable on micro four thirds than it is on something like the Nikon 1, because the 1-inch sensor is way smaller than the sensor in the micro four thirds cameras. So what are the negatives with these lenses? Well, they're entirely manual. You're going to have to shoot the camera in manual mode, and there's no autofocus, there's no onboard image stabilization in any of these lenses. It really is down to the photographer to try and get the best out of them. Now, some of them also, like this Fujian lens here, has a stepless aperture. Now that can be a bit confusing as a photographer. However, I understand as a filmmaker that's definitely a benefit. You'll also be a little bit limited as to what you can shoot using these lenses, and certainly a static subject is best. Build quality can also be a bit of an issue, as you'd expect, given the price point and the fact that they are manufactured by the truckload in China. Yes, build quality can be an issue, and in fact this little Fujian I took out one day a while back, and I ended up with a two-part lens, as I'd managed to go past the end of the threads when I was adjusting the lens. Whilst it was easy to rectify and put it back together, it did give me a few moments where I'd panicked a little bit, as I thought I'd clearly broken the lens. Another issue on these lenses is the very narrow depth of field that you get. You would probably expect that because you have to stop down a lot to get a good exposure with bright light with these lenses, that would give you a great depth of field as you would find with a conventional lens. However, it's simply not the case with these lenses. So as I said at the start of this video, these lenses won't work with your DSLR, and the reason for that, despite the fact you can find C-mount to Nikon F-mount adapters for example, is the fact that the distance between the sensor and the lens is just too great and you can't focus the lens. Additionally, there may be another issue with the fact that your mirror could perhaps catch the back of the lens as the mirror goes up, and yeah, that's a whole heap of expensive repairs. So if you do own a DSLR, don't waste your money, don't buy these lenses, and certainly don't bother with the adapter. So speaking of bodies, if you're going to be doing a project like I have here, where I bought C-mount lenses and bought a body to go with them as a photography project, then certainly I would spend a little bit more and look out for a camera body which has an EVF, because having that viewfinder is going to make life much easier when you're trying to get this very tight band of focus with these lenses, and it's a bit of a struggle in bright sunlight with something like the Nikon 1 series where they don't have an EVF. These screens on the back of these cameras were very acceptable for their time. However, technology has moved on and our expectations have moved on as well, and what was good 15-20 years ago is certainly not what we expect today. So if you can afford it, go for the Nikon V series of the Nikon 1, so the V1, V2, which came with a EVF, and I think it's Olympus pens, some of those come with an EVF as well, and they're certainly the ones you should be looking out for. They're all very affordable because they're quite old cameras now, but if you're after just a little bit of a fun project, then these C-mount lenses will certainly give you that. Whatever body you finally settle on, don't get too worried about the lack of megapixels. 10, 12, 14, 16 megapixels, whatever you choose, they'll be fine with these lenses. Just don't expect to be doing huge wall prints with them. So some final thoughts. One thing I can say about C-mount lenses and the experience with them is it will be fun. They are a little bit tricky, and I didn't have to go out and visit some honeypot location at the crack of dawn to enjoy my photography with them. I just simply picked up the camera and headed out and did some photography and thoroughly enjoyed it, which it was like it used to be when I first started photography. So I'll leave you now with the images I captured the other week when I went out and did some photographs in the height of summer, mainly flowers and other flora on my little countryside ramble. Oh, before I go, I did say I was going to share with you one lens not to use, and it's this one. Now I'll put up on screen where I bought it from. It is sold as a CCTV lens, like they all are. However, it is absolutely useless for photography. So don't make the same mistake I did. I mean, I didn't spend a lot. I think it was about something like £6, something like that, plus delivery. But you won't get any images out of this at all. So yeah, one to watch out for. Don't make the same mistake. Right, bye for now.